Are we there?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Reading Zone Live, everyone. It's lovely having you join us. I know we've got lots of schools coming on board to ask questions today, and we're here at the Greycoat Hospital in Westminster, so thank you for having us. And we're delighted to be joined by Fleur Hitchcock, so can we give her a big round of applause? Fleur is going to be telling us all about how we write contemporary thrillers and murder mysteries and a bit of non-fiction, because you cover a huge area, don't you? And the schools we've got joining us today are Ockbrook School in Derbyshire, Barndine School in Brighton, Auburn School in Woodford, Elm Park Primary, Cheam Common Junior and Willowbank Primary in London. So thank you for joining us. Let's get away. And I know we've got lots of schools watching us live as well. So I'm going to start by asking Fleur a few questions, just so that we can get to know our author a little bit better. And then we're going to be coming over to all of you to put your questions to Fleur. So we're going to be working you very hard today, I'm afraid, Fleur. But let's start with, how did you start writing?
I've always written. I expect you all have always written. But I have always gone on writing because I loved reading. So.
And yet you were dyslexic, or are dyslexic.
I am dyslexic, but when I was a child, I didn't know I was dyslexic. And my just did copper plate handwriting, it was called, for hours and hours on end. So yes, I am dyslexic, and that has made writing a little slower.
Okay. You write, well, we know you for your contemporary thrillers and also historical fiction / fantasy, for books like The Boy Who Flew. Let me just grab those quickly. So very different types of writing. These are Fleur's contemporary thrillers and adventure stories and the historical fiction. Automatically write if you were only allowed one of these?
I think it depends on the time of year. So it's like I come out after Christmas and I really want to crack on with something like another one of these. I don't know why. Maybe it's the time of year, it's dark, the long evenings, and I'm thinking, yeah, contemporary thriller, all feels a bit like that. And when it's the summer, I want to write things like this, which are a bit sort of lighter and younger, and then I think these are kind of slow burns to write. Very, like, you have to think about them a lot because I have to create the world.
So it takes perhaps a bit longer.
It takes longer, yeah.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about that book? Because this is your most recent one, isn't it? The Boy Who Flew.
The Boy Who Flew is an now in its first draft, and now it's and it took a really, really long time to get published, and it's had a lot of different drafts. It's about a boy called Athan Wild who lives in a place where there are some people who are incredibly affluent, but he belongs to a family which is not. And he lives with his mum and his two sisters and his really vile grandmother. And his horrible grandmother makes his own home horrible. But he works for this lovely man called Mr. Chen, who's an inventor. And together, Athan and Mr. Chen have built a flying machine. And at the very beginning of the book, Mr. Chen is murdered.
That sets everything off. Do you have, because I'm sure you're at your desk from duty to escape?
I have a family. So things happen, yeah, there's inbuilt escape. There are all those things that happen, like making people cakes and generally all together. So we say things like, "Should we go for a walk?" And then there's an argument about where. But I do love going to the cinema. I love going to the movies, theatre, anything where other people are telling me stories, I think, rather than me having to invent stories. And I love reading, and I just like being in the middle of countryside, whether it's walking or kayaking.
And I suppose that gives a lot of inspiration as well, doesn't it?
It does, really. It's a good place. I mean, being in the middle of the countryside, being in the middle of London, I mean, that story came from the middle of London. Murder in Midwinter. It doesn't look like it, does it? But it is actually set, the beginning of it, in Southern. So, yeah, being anywhere is kind of nice.
That's lovely. Okay, well, that's all my questions done. Now we're going to come over to our schools, and we're going to start with Ockbrook School in Derbyshire. Have you got a couple of questions for Fleur, please? Ockbrook School, we can't hear you. Are you on board?
We haven't actually got our question.
That's that? No? Okay. Let's go to Vandine School in Brighton. Have you got a couple of questions for me?
Vandine, okay.
Hello!
Hello!
Hello. Right. Am I low enough?
Yes.
Okay. Right. How do you successfully create suspense in your can you hear me? How do you
Can you shout, please? We can hear you, I promise.
how do you successfully create suspense in your story?
Right. How do I successfully create suspense in my stories? It's about piling on the risk, piling on the problems. So if you have a person in a situation that bigger and bigger and bigger, and that creates this ladder of suspense and thrill and takes you through the story.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Have we got one more from Vandine School, please? But as I said, we can hear you perfectly well. Vandine School? One more question?
Cody?
Another question.
Cody?
I'll ask you a question. We just went on it. 1 minute, guys.
Okay, we're going to move on to St Albans School in Woodford. Do you have a question for Fleur Hitchcock, please?
What was that? Okay. Yeah, Zach, do you want to come and look into the webcam? And I'll just. It's got to be a good one, though.
Okay. What's your question?
What do you do when you get stuck writing a story? When you get stuck?
That's lovely. Thank you. What do you do when you get stuck?
It's much easier for me because I'm not sitting in the classroom and I'm not surrounded by, I don't have like a 45-minute session or an hour or whatever it may be. So I go downstairs and I make a cup of tea and I go out for a walk, and very often it solves itself. But if it doesn't solve itself, I go backwards. So I read it through, and it's like taking another run at the ski slope. The first time you go down the ski slope and you're not going fast enough, you just sort of fall off the end. But if you're going fast enough and you're reading it through and you're in the moment, it'll take you through the bits where you get stuck. Doesn't matter how badly you write that bit, you can always repair it afterwards. You've just got to keep the momentum going.
Brilliant. Thank you for that question. Have you got one more for Fleur, please, St Albans?
Okay. Camera is here. Yeah, just answer.
How long did it take you to make your first book?
Thank you for that. How long did it
Thank
take
you.
to make your first book?
The first book that was published was a book called Shrunk, which actually took me about 6 weeks to write. But this book, which wasn't published, has taken 10 years. So they vary, is the answer. But the first book was 6 weeks.
It's a writer's dream, isn't it?
It is
to all
really.
write a book in 6 weeks. Elm Park Primary?
Oh, okay.
Okay. What's your question?
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. We can hear you perfectly well.
Who was your favourite author when you was younger?
Who was my favourite author when I was younger? I read a lot, and I remember certain. I think to say one would be difficult, but I remember reading The Weird Stone of Brisingamen, which is by Alan Garner, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was just fantastic, and for many years I thought the whole bit that happens inside the mountain was part of The Hobbit, but I read it again recently and discovered it's in The Weird Stone of Brisingamen. But I also really love the books of Nina Borden, who wrote Carrie's War, but she also wrote a really good book called Runaway Summer, which is the first book I ever came across that's about refugees, and it was written in like 1968 or something. So that was one of my all-time favorites.
Brilliant, thank you. That was a great question. Have you got one more from Elm Park Primary, please?
I think you've answered it. Was how long does it take you to write your first book?
Okay, that's fine. We will move on then to Cheam Common Junior. Thank you for those questions. So, Cheam Common Junior, have you got a couple of questions for Fleur, please?
Yes, we have. What is it that makes a story effective?
What is it that makes a story effective?
Wow, that is a really, really good question, and nobody has ever asked it before. Is the most important point of a story or a book is that because you have a writer, you have a story, but neither of these things are important unless you have a reader. And what makes a story effective is whether it reaches the reader. So I think the reader has to feel the story when they read it. And an effective story is one that actually reaches the heart of the reader. And in those terms, I think actually that the most important part of the story then is character. Because if you want to relate to something, you kind of have to have a person to relate to more than anything else. So at the heart of it all, I'd say, is a good character. Great question.
Indeed. Can we have one more from Cheam Common Junior, please? Thank you.
What advice would you give to someone interested in becoming an author?
I would so say read, because it's what I did. Even though I found writing was harder work, it would never have been possible for me to be a writer if I hadn't read as much as I have read and did read. So in the first instance, spend the first 25, 30 years of your life reading as much as you possibly can. And I think just read as much as you can. And then as you read, what happens is that your own stories will bubble through the holes. They will come up. You will think, I really liked that, but I would have done it differently. And that, I think, is how it works. That you just keep on reading until your own stories bubble up, because they're feeding your imagination, feeding your word skills, feeding your story building ability. All of those things are fed by reading.
Brilliant. Thank you for both those questions. We're going to go to Willowbank Primary now. Have you got a couple of questions for Fleur, please? They've left the chat. Okay, we won't go to Willowbank Primary. Raincoat, it's your turn. Yes, what's your question?
How do you control all of the plot twists of a good thriller so that you don't go backwards and forwards?
That is a very good question. I think you do have to watch things going backwards and forwards. It's like a corkscrew, and it becomes boring if that happens. You need to watch out for things becoming boring by going, oh, and he was his sister. Oh, and it was her brother, and it was. Do you know what I mean? It's like there is also a danger that, and this is why I find Agatha Christie sometimes a bit tedious, that there's a whole load of information that nobody knew until very near the end of the story. You need to make sure that any information that's going to come towards the end of the story is actually in it earlier on. It's not like a secret. So, and that will stop those plot twists going backwards and forwards, because actually the information is in there, even if it's quite well hidden. It is there.
How do you think about how you're going to end stories? So like with the murder mysteries, you have like a twist at the end.
I think you know what the very end is going to be, and then as you look at your characters, you're watching your characters go through, you often realise that there's a point towards the end where it would be possible to just flip it over. So you are watching for that. But it can come from anywhere. So it's like you're watching a whole bunch of people move forward. I say that as if I don't control it, but to a certain extent, I don't control it. Those characters I've created are controlling it.
Did you not know what the twist is going to be?
No, I don't know what the twist is really going to be until they're there, and I can see that somebody might be not what you think they're somewhere. Which I think is probably what most twists are, that somebody is not what you think they are. Just a question of which of those characters it is.
Okay, great question, thank you. Do we have a Brook School with us? Holly? No, okay. Right, Barndean School. We have a question from you, please, for Fleur.
Okay, we have a question. Come on.
Is there a specific book that you have written that relates to you or something that's happened in your life so far?
No, it's a basic answer, but that actually is not entirely true. I think as a writer, you always use stuff that has kind of happened to you, so characters are from places. There's a book called Saving Sophia, which is, I think there's a character called Lottie. Lottie longs for excitement, and I longed for excitement. And so she is quite based on me. And then the other one is Murder at Twilight, which is in the place I grew up. It's set in the place I grew up.
Thank you. Thanks for that question. Right, St Albans School in Woodford, have you got a couple of questions for Fleur, please?
Okay, Harry. Oh, okay. You want to go the
Hello?
What's your favourite book you've written so far?
Thank you.
The favourite book that I've written so far, that is such a difficult question. It's like asking somebody who their favourite child is. And as a mother, that would be a really dangerous thing to do. I like them all for different reasons. I like this one because I've lived with it for so long. I like this one because it's set in the snow, Murder in Midwinter, and I really like the snow and London. I love this one because it's where I grew up. And this one reminds me of the books of my childhood. Really difficult to say. I can't possibly answer it.
Okay, but thank you for the question. Can we have another one from St Albans School, please? Hello, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Can you switch your mic on?
What's your most popular book?
Most popular book, thank you for that.
That's a very good question. My most popular books are, I say, this one's only been out a couple of months and it is very popular, The Boy Who Flew. This one has been out a couple of years and has sold many more copies. So
Do you know how many books you're how many copies of your books are sold? Get those?
Sort of. I don't quite get them as much as I might do. I know that 4,500 of these have gone through tills since March, so that's quite a lot. But I know that 37,500 of these went out through the book buzz scheme.
Thank you for those questions. I think Elm Park didn't have another question, so we're going to go to Chim Common Junior School, please. Have you got a couple of questions, Fleur?
Okay. In your book Cliff Toppers, the story focuses on children going on holiday to their grandparents. Where did this idea come from? Is it reflective of your own childhood experience?
Great question. Yes, so Cliff Toppers is about 4 children going on holidays. Does it come from my own childhood experience? And to a certain extent it does. I grew up in an age of basic freedom for children, I think, with immensely negligent parents. And in this case, I thought I would make the grandparents negligent rather than the parents. And I also wanted to have 4 children that came from really different places. But I had a childhood gang. We had a gang, and it's such a different sense from gang now. This is a bunch of children that run wild in the countryside, just climbing trees and doing stuff. There were no criminals to catch. Oh, I so wish there had been. But as it was, there were just trees to be climbed, and we used to cycle bicycles into the river and stuff like that. So it sounds very Enid Blyton. It was quite Enid Blyton in a way, but actually I never read Enid Blyton books, so I don't know the answer to that. I read Malcolm Saville, who wrote adventure stories that were a bit similar. So yes, in a way it does totally come from my own experience. Yeah.
Thanks for that question. Can we have one more from Chim Common Junior, please?
Many of your stories have a countryside setting. Do you think this makes a nicer story setting, or is there an actual reason you've chosen the countryside?
Sorry, we might get a question. Could you just please?
Many of your stories and set in countryside. Do you think this makes a nicer setting, or is there an actual reason you've chosen the countryside?
Thank you. Brilliant. I live in the countryside, and therefore it's the landscape I know the best. But I think that it's not. There's CCTV cameras everywhere in this country, London, all the major cities. If you want people to behave off screen, in a sense, you've got to go to the countryside, because it's the only place where things can happen that people can't see later, that the police don't know about, actually. So I actually think that may be why I use it as well, just a bit freer. Good question.
The logistics of your
because otherwise there is always the danger that children could just go, let's tell the police, which is not what you're wanting them to do all the time. But if they did, then the whole adventure would be taken out of their hands. It would be no fun at all.
Okay, thank you. Those were great questions. Let's come back to Greycoat Hospital.
Other than the character in that was based on herself.
Oh, well, the girl in Saving Sophia, she's called Lottie, yes.
Other than that character, any of the main characters based on it?
In The Boy Who Flew, Athen has this horrendous grandmother.
Don't tell me you knew the grandmother.
My grandmother was pretty horrific, and she once turned to me when I was about your age and said, "You think I'm an ogre?" And I looked up at her and I thought, I do think you're an ogre. So I think there is an element of that. I also think that Athen Wilde, the boy in this, is slightly based on my own son. And the Ma in it is probably based a bit on me, actually. But I don't deliberately use people I know, because it's a really dangerous thing to do. You could lose all your friends and all your family. But I do look at other people's relationships. So I have used the relationships of my children to each other and to their friends. There's a book called Bus Stop Baby, and the relationships that my daughter was having at the time with her friends are quite difficult, and I sort of use that a bit.
Thank you. Thanks for that question.
How do you decide who the murderer is?
But how do you decide who the murderer or the bad person is?
Well, in a way, writing is not a lonely thing on your own. You have this team of people in your publishing house, editors, and the first draft, I've usually decided who the bad person is. And then I have a conversation with them in which maybe some doubt is cast on that. And then you wonder what would happen. And this is this whole business about the twist. You wonder whether actually that is the moment. So having conversations with other people about the story. Because the story that comes out at the end as a book is quite different from the first story that I write. Not totally, but it's quite different.
Thank you. Thanks for those questions. We're going to go back to Barney School in Brighton. Can we have a very quiet question?
I'm sorry. What made you persevere with writing?
I'm sorry, we can't hear because of the shouting in the background.
What made you persevere with writing novels?
Thank you. What made you persevere with writing your novels?
Well, I'm very grateful to the rest of my family because and this is true of all writers. I think very few people write a book, get a publisher, get their book published, and the sun comes out. Most of us have to live with a large number of "thank you, it was lovely, but not for us" letters, or less nice, actually. So you have to learn to dig deep, and I actually think that I learned to be quite a resilient person when I was younger, and I think that failures that I had when I was younger informed my ability to keep going. But it does require perseverance, and I knew that I had a good book, and I think that's important.
Which was your first?
Well, in a way, it was The Boy Who Flew, even though it's the last book that's been published. It was the first. A whole bunch of others. Now that book's been published, part of me says, well, that's fine, you can stop now, you've done it. And another part of me goes, oh, what about all the other stories waiting to come out? I do think you have to have a story waiting to come out.
Thank you. Thanks. That's a great question. Yeah. St Albans School in Woodford, have you got a couple of questions for Fleur, please?
Okay, Sebastian.
Hello.
How many books have you written so far?
Thank you for that. How many books have you written so far?
I'm not absolutely sure. I think it might be 12.
And that's not how many have been published?
Well, I think that, I'm not sure. Maybe that is 12 that have been published, and then I've actually got another 2 which are written, which haven't come out yet. So that would be 14 that are written, I think.
Is it too early to tell us a little bit about what your next book is going to be published?
The next book that will be published, definitely 100%, is the next one of the Clifftoppers series, which is called The Fire Bay Adventure, in which 4 cousins, who are, they called Josh, Ava, Chloe and Aidan, go and stay with their grandparents on Clifftoppers Farm, which is on the Dragon Peninsula. and they will have some strange fires are happening in the village, and they don't know what's causing them. And there is also an annual tar barrel rolling celebration that happens with the fireworks, and everything gets mixed up with that. So it's quite a fiery adventure, and it's a lot of fun.
Are you writing any more murder mysteries?
I am writing something that will be a bit like The Boy Who Flew, but probably with a girl as the central character at the moment.
Okay. Do you have a title for that yet?
No.
Okay. But watch out for the next.
It will come out this time, no, March next year.
March next year. So just maybe a year.
Yeah.
Okay. St Albans, one more school for Fleur, please. Sorry. One more question for Fleur. Lots of hands there. Yes. Who's going to be asking? Oh, here she comes. Hello.
Why do you like to read?
Hold on, just in case I didn't see.
Why do you like to read?
You lost our connection. Another place when I was a child that I lived in a place that was very, very boring except for running around with my friends. We didn't have much entertainment, so books offered very exciting stories, and my life was quite dull. And I think I've gone on finding that they were always an escape, that other people's lives, other people's stories were just interesting. And a book is such a brilliant way of getting hold of that. It's all in one place.
Good question. Right, we've got time for a couple of very quick questions from Team Common Junior. We've got two more for Fleur, please. Are we still there? Oh yes, there you are. Hello.
What is the thought process you use when devising story ideas?
What's the thought process when thinking of a story?
Sadly, I've left my notebook over on the other side of the screen. Otherwise, I could show you what an unbelievable mess it is. It's usually a person drawn with circles around their name, and lots of arrows coming off it, with possible other people they might interact with. So that's the first bit. Then I might try and work out what makes them join up, or where they meet, how they're going to intersect, how their lives are going to intersect. Is that a thought process? I suppose it is. And then I will look at the sort of plot unraveling. But I start with the characters, always start with the characters, and some kind of
One more from Team Common Junior. Hello.
Influence the way in which you write.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Do you want to switch your mic off? Come back. Come back. Don't have your question.
What authors have influenced the way in which you write?
I can't hear you. The mic isn't on. Do you want to, right, now your mic's on. I'm sorry, you're going to have to come back one more time. Tell us your question. We didn't hear it. Okay.
What authors have influenced the way in which you write?
Sorry, have other authors?
That's a very good question. All authors have influenced the way I write, one way or another, because even if you don't like the way somebody's written, that is also a learning process. If you think something isn't written the way you want it to be written, you take that on board. I would say that I look at the books of somebody like Jill Lewis, and I think they are beautifully, clearly, and Catherine Rundle, They're both beautifully, clearly written, and in that sense, I aspire to write like them. Not in their style or anything, but as clearly as they write. So both of them are people that influence my writing now.
Okay. Do you read a lot of?
I read tons of children's books. Absolutely.
Yes, of course,
masses.
because you're a
I'm a
bookseller as
bookseller.
well, aren't you? Yes.
So I do. I read an all. She-Wolf by Dan Smith is cracking. If you haven't read it, if you like a bit of historical, it's set for Vikings. Really good. Another book is The Closest Thing to Flying by Jill Lewis, which I've just finished. That's beautifully read, beautifully written. The Malamander by Thomas Taylor is a great fantasy. I think middle grade is so rich. Actually, that's massive.
Excellent, thank you. Time for 2 more quick questions here. Who hasn't asked yet? Yes, what's your question?
What tips do you have for setting an atmosphere in a piece of script?
So what tips for setting an atmosphere in a piece of descriptive writing?
Okay, remember the senses. So you don't just see everything. You do hear it and smell it and feel it. You might even taste it. Because I really think that, you know, it's cold and it's misty. You really want that feeling of the mist hitting your skin. You want the cold. You want the way it feels when you breathe it into your lungs. So it is that thing of absolutely imagining yourself in there in order for the reader to imagine themselves. That's what.
Okay, and one last question. Yes.
If you weren't an author, what would your dream job be?
So if you weren't an author, what would be your dream job?
Well, I used to say I'd quite like to work in a bookshop, but actually I work in a bookshop. So that's quite good because I managed to do both of those things. I have been a gardener and I thoroughly enjoyed it, but your back gives that actually. I used to say being a florist, and actually I came up on the train today with a bunch of people who were florists, and I thought I would like that. I love colour and would like to work in a flower shop with a unlimited number of flowers. It's weird. Yes, I like that. I mean, maybe I'd like to be a film director, but I just can't quite get my head around it.
Be slightly gentler like being a florist as
I
well.
think so.
Yes. Thank you for that. We've had some brilliant questions this afternoon. Thank you all. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank you to everyone who's joined us. It's been lovely having you, and thank you so much to Fleur Hitchcock, who's given us a wonderful insight into writing today, and I hope you all go away and take some of those tips and practice it yourselves. Thank you very much, Fleur. Thank you. Big wave to all our schools.
Great questions.